She swore never with a human until one meeting changed everything. The alien envoy moved through the market of the ring city in quiet steps. She wore a cloak the color of dusk and bone marks. Along her wrists that showed rank, she was called Vera. In her own tongue, her people told stories of humans as storms in small bodies loud. Bright, short-lived, and always pushing Vera had taken an oath. In the Shrine of Stars, never with a human, she said, never in trade, never in trust, never in hearthen. Duty placed her near the docks where human ships came and went like tide there. She first saw a woman kneeling by a broken crate. The woman held a wrench with a careful hand and a calm face. Her name tag read Claire, simple letters, soft sound Claire. Spoke to a scared dock crawler and soothed it with steady words. Vera felt a strange pull like gravity waking. She turned away and told herself the oath was. Iron days went on. Vera worked charts and argued over tariffs with guilds. Humans argued. Louder and smiled afterward. She did not smile, but she watched Claire repaired the small machines that kept the ring city alive. She carried a pack stitched with blue thread and a sticker that said Hope. Vera did not know the word, but she saw the way people stood straighter near Claire. She told herself that observation was wise craft, not a Tractiona storm. Of dust rose from the cold side of the station, alarms sang, and lights went thin. Vera moved to the safety corridor with other envoys. Claire ran the other way, toward the breech lockers. Vera felt the pull again. She told herself it was steady, but her steps followed the human into the roar of the storm. Corridor door jammed and metal screamed. Claire looked back and saw Vera. Their no words were needed together. They forced the latch with hands, and shoulder air pulled at them with hungry breath. They fell into the locker bay and sealed the inner hatch. In the dim light, they sat on the floor and listened to the wind rage. Outside, Vera watched the human breathe steady in and steady out like a drum. Claire spoke, and her voice was low and warm. She said the seal will hold and the storm will pass. Vera nodded and asked her name with a gentle tilt. Claire said, Claire, and smiled. Sorry for the mess. She laughed a small laugh, and it felt like heat in winter. Vera found her own mouth curve in answer. She thought her oath had not mentioned laughter. Storm ended, but something new had begun. Vera walked the market and saw colors she had not noticed before. Saffron cloth, copper fruit, the silver hair clip in Claire hair that caught station light. She began to plan her day so that paths might cross by honest chance. She told herself it was diplomacy, a true envoy. Learns the pulse of every Faucon evening. A power loss struck. The lower ring machines stopped. Shops went dark. People spoke in soft fear. Claire moved through the dusk with a hand lamp in her pack. Vera followed with a lantern from her quarter. Together, they reached the old inverter that hummed like a tired beast. Claire opened the panel, and Vera held the lamp. Each screw turned, felt like a bead on a string of Timaeus. They worked. Claire told small stories of Earth, not the grand wars or the big cities, but the creek behind her aunt house where frogs sang in summer rain, the diner where her sister served pie to passing truckers. The sky that went on forever above the plains. Vera listened and saw pictures in her mind like tapestries. She had traveled star to star, but had never imagined a creek with frogs. Claire asked about Vera rivers and customs. Vera spoke of moon gardens and night markets where spices glowed, of bone marks that showed lineage, and choice of the law that said a vow once spoken must stand or be broken in light before elders. She did not speak the words never with a human, but they stood between them like a thin wall. Inverter coughed and then purred, and the lights returned. Cheers rose from nearby. Doris. Claire lifted her chin and grinned in relief. Vera felt her chest loosen in a way that was not just because of power. The human said, "Thanks for the help," and offered a hand. Their fingers touched. Vera's skin cooled and warmed at once. She thought of the wall and of Doris. Days later, a new ship arrived with dark cargo and darker men. They sold fear with smiles. They whispered of special bonds that made workers obedient. Claire frowned and tracked them on her service routes. Vera reported them to Guild Watch and was told to stay polite. The men moved faster than the watch. One stuck a patch on a young porter in the girl eyes. When Claire did not wait, she pulled the patch and wrapped the girl arm with cloth. Then she shouted for help and chased the man into a storage tunnel. Vera heard the call and ran. She found Claire cornered by two men near a vent that breathed cold fog. Vera stepped between them and the human. Her voice When sharp as glass leaves, she said "thee" laughed, and reached for her cloak. Vera moved, like tide over stone. She had trained since childhood in forms that looked like dance and felt like thunder. One man fell with a gasp, the other raised a baton and lunged. Claire swung her wrench and broke the strike aside. Vera caught the opening and pressed 2 bone marks on the man's wrist. He hissed and dropped the baton. They fled with curses and quick feet. Porter girl blinked and cried. Claire held her and whispered. Vera called medics and stood watch until they came afterward. They sat by the vent and let the fog cool their faces. Claire said thanks. Vera said, there is no debt between us. But the words felt thin against what had passed between their hands, and Hart's news spread the guild. Watch woke at last and swept the market. The dark men vanished like stains in rain. Vera received a formal note from the Shrine of Stars. The elders had heard that she used forbidden force in a public place. They called her to answer the light. She knew what that meant. Bring the truth and accept the weight the oath would come with. Hirsch walked alone to the shrine. The floor was smooth stone from a moon quarry. The elders sat behind a veil of soft metal beads. They listened as she told the story in full. She spoke of the market and the storm and the vent. She spoke of Claire. She spoke of the oath she had sworn. Never with a human her voice did not shake. An elder asked how the world turned on that vow. Vera said the vow had kept her safe and blind. It had saved her from bonds of fear, but also from bonds of care. She said humans were storms as told in old tales, but they were also hands that repaired and voices that soothed. She said she had seen hope stitched on a pack and felt it like a new star. The elders were silent for a time, measured in soft breaths. Then the veil rattled like rain as they rose. They said a vow may be a shield or a cage. They said she could keep it and close her eyes or break it in the light and carry the mark. Vera bowed and chose. She stood under the beam of the shrine and spoke to the open. Ere I break the old vow, I choose a new path with full scythe. Beam burned a thin line across her wrist beside the old bone marks. It would never fade. Outside the shrine, she found Claire waiting near the steps. Claire looked worried and brave. Vera lifted her hand and showed the new line. She said, I would like to walk with you if you will have me. Claire's eyes shone, and her smile trembled like water and wind. She said, then let us walk the ring together. They repaired things and made small jokes and shared food from both worlds. Vera learned how to brew a tea that tasted like morning sun. Claire learned how to braid wire as if it were silk. They watched ships rise and fall like bright seeds. They built a pattern, not an oath. Something softer and stronger. Time moved, and the ring city felt the change. Others began to cross small gaps. A baker hired a miner from far out and learned new ways to heat stone. A pilot traded spare parts for stories and maps. A nurse from Orbit Quarter taught first aid in the market square. Every third day, Vera saw the pattern spread and thought of hope again. She touched the line on her wrist and did not regret a night. The core failed in a cascade, and the whole city shuddered. Gravity slipped, lights died. Panic flowed like dark water. Claire and Vera were already moving. They split the routes because trust had made them quick. Vera went to the control decks, and Claire to the battery halls. If they could not hold the ring on course, the city would tumble. Vera found a counsel in argument and fear. She spoke with clear tone and steady hands. She showed a path through the chaos using corridors many had forgotten. Do this and this and this. She said they listened because she did not waste breath. Teams moved locks, reset vents closed. Still the numbers fell. Claire reached the battery hall and faced a maze of swollen cells. One wrong move would melt the room. She remembered the creak behind her aunt house and the way she had balanced on stepping stones. One step, then the next. She breathed steady in and steady out and cut the old couplers. She rebuilt the bridge with scrap and simple skill, and a band of friends who had learned from her in quiet days. The meters rose. Like dawn, Vea felt the change through the floor. She smiled and sent the final command to align the ring outside the ports. The stars steadied. Inside the halls, voices rose in relief and pride. The council offered awards and words. Claire and Vera took them with grace and then went home by the long way so they could look at the lights in a small balcony near the waste heat gardens. They stood close. They spoke of the first day in the storm and the night By the inverter and the vent with cold fog, they spoke of fear and courage and the thin wall that had stood between them. Vera said the wall had taught her what a wall cannot give. Claire said storms can clean as well as break. She reached for Vera's hand and held it. Vera thought of the stories told in her youth she made. A new one in simple lines: a woman from the stars learns that strength is not the same.